Yeah, I'm gonna be honest about this whole thing. I think you only rally behind Kirk because, he was one of the good old boys, he's a good Christian like you, that's what you call it, and this is all identity politics. Charlie Kirk was a Christian, and so therefore, you all rally behind him as if, no Christian can do a bad thing, or that no Christian can be hateful or say any vile shit. American Christianity is the literal worst. Because there's no hatred like Christian love. There's always, he's up there on stage basically shit talking MLK Jr., saying he's a terrible person, and shit talking. By the way, MLK Jr. was a Christian too. What? So he's attacking his fellow Christians, saying he's not worth it. He's shit talking about some of the most revered figures in American history and saying terrible things about them, and somehow he's a good person. God, give me a fucking break. And then they call me a fraud. Man, this is some bullshit. It's like you guys only take his fucking side because you see him as one of you. One of you fucking Christians. And that's exactly why I don't count myself as one of you anymore. You'll rally behind any fucking one of you, no matter how vile they are, no matter how much terrible shit they say. Just because they happen to be a Christian. Like, God. I get asked questions like, don't you know that they're going to heaven, with, like this asshole.
What's going on, everybody? It's Pastor Dave Beaver. It's Sunday night. I'm actually standing here outside the church, watching my little guy play on my older tour and youth group with many other students. And I've kind of waited till now to just kind of share this, and I want to share this because I think it's important. First and foremost, let me say this. My heart breaks.
Never mind. That's fine. There we go. This asshole, and a number of them. It wasn't just one or two. It was a bunch of them.
Are you sad that 50 pedophiles were killed today? No, I think that's great. I think that helps society. I think Orlando, Florida,
falsely
is a little safer
accused
tonight.
of being pedophiles.
Do anything. As far as I'm concerned, Orlando's just a little safer tonight. I wish the government would round them all up, put them up against a firing wall, put a firing squad in front of them, and blow their brains out.
Yeah, I knew one of the victims that died at the Pulse. Personally, I was a friend of the family of one of them, Amanda Alvear. Got shot at that whole thing, and these Baptist preachers are going on and on and on about how great it was that a bunch of people got shot at the whole thing because they happened to be members of the LGBTQIA community. I mean, and then you sit there and Christian pastor basically says that praises Orlando shooter, sad that he didn't kill more gays. And this is the quote unquote Christian response. It's always coming from, and you notice it's never European Christians. It's always a fucking American, from the United States that's doing this. But there's no fucking hatred like Christian love. I mean, if this is what you call love, and you've confused, I think you're fucking full of shit. You think if this is what you think is love, you don't know the fucking first thing about love, and I don't give a shit if you think they're going to hell for what they are. Go fuck yourselves. Fuck you and fuck your God too. The only use for a Bible is fucking fire paper. Burn them all, and God damn you all to fucking hell. I'm fucking sick of it. This is why I don't go to church anymore. It's why I won't step foot in one of them anymore. Because you're all sitting there, basically like, hooray, 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 a bunch of people got killed. at this nightclub and everything, and a bunch of tragedies. And it personally impacted a close friend of mine from back in high school, back from when I was still in Orlando. And his family, his mother had already buried one child, but now she has to bury another. And we've got these pastors basically coming out and basically, praising the Pulse shooting, and despite all the horror of all of it, they're basically saying, it's falsely accusing them all of being pedophiles. She could have gotten out of there too. She went back in to try to rescue people. But no, you've got the quote-unquote Christian, response, and it's all, I wish they had killed more people in the damn club. You know what, to you Christians, go fuck yourselves, fuck you, fuck your God, and fuck, hail Satan, and God, you preach this message of eternal life, but, if eternal life means being stuck in unquote heaven, unquote, with pieces of shit like that, then I'd rather burn. You know what? Because I'd rather burn than spend 5 minutes of time talking to Pastor George Ramones or, the other pastors who praised the Pulse nightclub shooting, I really would. Like, fuck this. Imagine wanting to spend eternity with those people, Fuck that. I'm out. And you know what? I think you only close circles around him at all because he's a Christian, which just goes to show you the nature of your character as Christians. Jesus. What would Jesus do in this kind of situation? Well, it's certainly not what you're doing. Certainly not acting like you are. That's the thing. I don't dislike your Christ, but you Christians, if there is a Christ, Lord, protect me from your followers. They're awful.